So hello and welcome to another monthly show. Now, technically, I suppose this is the November show, but because of Thanksgiving last week, we're running it in December, and we're actually recording this at the very beginning of the month. So you're going to get all the latest, freshest updates of what's happening on the Cardano project. Now, actually, this is the first of 3 times that you're going to see us this month. Also on the 17th of December, towards the end of the month, that'll be our last show of the month, and we'll have some more updates and news for you on that show as well. And on the 10th, we'll also be running something a little bit special, something a bit more reflective, a retrospective of how far we've come in this past year. So this isn't the monster show you're used to, but there's still a lot of content to share tonight. So with no further ado, let's crack straight on. Aparna, how are you?
Doing great, Tim. Enjoyed a couple of days off last week for the US Thanksgiving. So for those viewers that are watching us from the US, hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving, enjoyed some downtime with the family. Lots to be thankful for here at Cardano and IO especially. A lot of progress in a lot of different areas, and that's what we're going to cover. One of 3 shows. We're going to cover a lot on Goguen and some partner news as well. So let's get started.
Yeah, we're also going to have some exciting news on some new DevNets that we're going to be launching as well, but more of that later in the show. Perhaps we'll start off with the subject of delegation. Now, we announced recently a change to our delegation strategy. I caught up with a few of the team, so let's go to that clip now. So at the end of last month, we introduced a new delegation strategy for IOG and our commitment to move from public pools into a mix of private pools and also delegating back into the community. So joining me now are Ben, Lando, and also Colin, who have been integral to developing that strategy and also will be helping as we roll it out over the months ahead. So perhaps we can start, Colin, with you, and perhaps you can just give us a little bit more background and some of the motivations behind the creation of these programs.
Thank you, Tim. First, we're strong believers that your delegation is your vote. It's an important way to shape the platform and ecosystem. So with our delegation program, we're looking to go a bit beyond our role just as a developer of the platform, guaranteeing the stability and security of the platform, and supporting a plurality of ideas, and to advocate for a specific type of system, and specifically one that focuses on a message of personal responsibility, decentralization, and geographic diversity. And while our goals and priorities will change over time, we felt with a change of the system parameters to K equals 500, this was the right time to embark on a program to encourage the largest number of truly independent stake pool operators. And so the first part of our delegation program will be looking to go out and engage and support operators that we think are supporting those values. And one of those is we think pools with a high amount of pledge and who are not looking to maximize the leverage are going to be an important aspect of the initial choice of selections. And we also recognize that there are pools that come from economies where maybe they do not have enough money for the pledge. And so we're also looking at purpose pools and specifically to make sure that pools are not lost from the list of delegation candidates, and we give them the focus and attention that they need as well.
So this is another part of the kind of the evolution, I suppose, of the relationship, if you like, with the stake pool operator community. Ben, you came on board a couple of months ago now with a sort of specific brief to try and improve the feedback loop. And this, I guess, is part of that kind of evolution. But perhaps you can just frame it a little bit more around some of the other activities that you've been doing and how this fits in.
Yeah, that's right, Tim. When I joined, we talked about improving feedback loops for stake pool operators and for the stakeholders in the ecosystem. And I've mentioned before that what that looks like is lowering the barriers to observation and orientation. And that would allow everybody in the ecosystem to make better decisions, take more actions, and we hope reduce uncertainty. So a good example of that is that we recently did a Daedalus survey, which drove over 4,000 respondents with feedback into the team that's going to help drive the development and product decisions. And there was a really significant win. Now, it's really important that we do support stake pools. And, I've been in all of the Telegram groups that I've been able to find. So, if I'm not in one, then please send it to me. And everybody's concerned about how stake pools are going to be supported. They're concerned about the delegation strategy. So I've worked with Lando. On the 10th, we're going to be launching a chatbot form. So we want to make it simple. We want to make it easy, and we're going to invite state pools to apply for delegation. And we'll be reviewing that in January, and I believe we're going to be doing that in cohorts, which are released every 3 months. So I hope that's going to be an easy, simple experience, and open to feedback if anybody has it as they go down that route.
So Lando, that's the 10th of December that we're going to be opening up this opportunity up, I guess, to the stake pool operator community. Perhaps you can just give us a little bit more detail. If I'm a stake pool operator and I'm watching this now and I'm thinking that sounds like something I'd like to get involved in, what's the sort of information we'll be looking for, and what can people expect in return?
In that form, we will be looking for pools with a purpose, pools with a mission or a goal to help or to improve the world we are all living on. As IOHK is not only delivering and working on Cardano, it's also a company with a mission. We want to bring something or do something for the world. So we're looking for pools that, for example, run eco-friendly, that they use eco-friendly resources to run their pools. Also, we will look for stake pool operators that donate part of their rewards to a charity or that are run on behalf of a charity. Some other stake pool operators that, for example, could create educational content. It could be for Cardano or any other type of educational content about technology or to help people access a better labor, for example. Also, we want to help stake pool operators that run in developing countries. As Colin has said, it may be more difficult to them to access a high amount of pledge to attract more delegation. We are looking for small stake pool operators, and we will cycle through the complete list of stake pool operators before selecting a new stake pool operator twice. So we can help the whole community as much as we can before returning to select the same stake pool operators. We will delegate enough time to the stake pool operators so that they can attract delegation and that they can produce a block every time or every epoch. And we will also be considering and checking the block production, because we also want stake pool operators that are committed with the cause and that they have a nice block production stake pool operators. So that's something we will be controlling when we do the selection of the stake pool operators.
Okay, and so 10th of December, applications open. We'll sort of close applications just before the end of the year. We'll review those. So the first stake pools, whether they're a purpose-driven pool or an incubator-based pool, will be receiving their first data delegations, hopefully by the end of January, that kind of time frame. So look, I mean, if you are an SPO and you're watching this at the moment, do keep an eye out on our social media and our Twitter, and I'm sure Ben will send that link out on the 10th, which of course is Ada Lovelace's birthday, if you haven't picked up on that already. So keep an eye out for that then. Thanks very much, everybody, for joining.
That's a great initiative, Tim. Nice conversation. And that really does drive home decentralization and how we want to be diverse and inclusive with our pool delegation strategy.
Yeah, I think so. And I think we mentioned one date there, which of course is the 10th of December, which is when those call for applications will go out. But it's also important to note there's another date coming up very soon, on the 6th, in fact, which is when the parameter changes, the K parameter changes from 150 to 500. Now, that's important for the stake pool operator community because it basically broadens the chance of creating blocks from smaller pools. So that's an important thing. It broadens the choice for ADA delegators to choose a pool themselves. But I think if you're a delegator and you're watching this, and if you're currently delegating to a pool which is more than 30% saturated, you need to find yourself a new pool because you are not currently getting your optimum rewards. So that's an important message also just to get out to everybody today. So let's move on. Let's talk Goguen, Aparna. Now, lots of updates on this show around Goguen, and I think you caught up with Vuk to take us through a few of the highlights.
I did. So we're going to talk to you about native tokens all the way through a new DevNet initiative that we have. So let's roll that clip. Okay, so welcoming Vuk back to the show. We're here today to talk about the Goguen program and some of the immediate deliverables that are happening, which is actually very exciting because we have made a lot of progress in terms of the program. So we talked about how the program starts with metadata and then moves into the native tokens aspect, which has actually two areas strategically for us. One happens to be native, And then the second is the ERC20 conversion project. And then how Plutus and Marlowe played. And then we've also got something else we're working on with interoperability, which we'll talk about in this segment. So Vuk, just starting with the basics, we put a few slides together with our product marketer, Maki, and to explain to the community and to our audience really what native tokens are, what they can do, some of the differences between ERC20 and native tokens. And this particular slide, it might seem very, very basic, but in reality, because the industry has so many different terms for almost the same thing, in order not to create confusion, product marketing, we've decided to make a glossary. That way our internal team knows, our developers know, the community will know what we're calling different things. So Vuk, explain to us some of the key structures within the native tokens environment.
Yeah, sure. So we have, of course, some basic concepts like the token and the asset. The token, of course, is basically a representation of an asset on the Cardano blockchain. Now, the concept that is different from the other blockchains is the token bundle. We had to create this concept in order for us to be able to allow users to transact multiple tokens in one transaction. So when you're sending a transaction with a token bundle, you're sending multiple tokens at once. And of course, the native means that it's on the ledger layer, which is very different from other blockchains where it's on the smart contracts layer.
Great. So this is going to be a part of our lingo and how we speak. So just for the community's sake, as you see documentation, we'll kind of follow these standards, and we wanted to share that with you. So going to the next slide, I'm not going to touch upon this a lot. We actually spoke about this the last show, about some of the examples of tokens and what partners want to do with them, with loyalty points, or whether people have shares in companies or music rights, things of that nature. So we broke that down a bit as well into like security asset types, stable coins, and non-fungibles. This doesn't mean that this is all we're doing. The platform is really broad. And as we come out with our pre-production environments, which will help us develop the applications and types of tokens people would like to create, we will solidify the examples of these types of tokens that are being created on Cardano. And then one of the other things that we like to do, and if you're a regular viewer of a show, you would have heard me say this, but designing for our actual user. How are they going to use this? What will make their lives easier? So when it comes to native tokens, we actually have broken it down based on the roadmap for it. So Vuk, why don't you take us through this high level?
Yeah, sure. So in the first release, as part of the pre-production environment, we are focused on dev developers and power users. This is mainly because of the fact that we are going to release only the CLI, and people will be able to mint and burn tokens only through that. At a later stage, we are going to allow other personas as well, like startups, enterprises, leverage native tokens with less technical expertise necessary. And of course, at the end, we are going to allow any user to leverage native tokens either through wallets or any other tool that is focused on normal people.
That's great. All right, so there was a lot of buzz in the community when we had mentioned how native tokens, one of the value propositions of this being on Cardano, is we would treat it very similar to how we treat our principal currency, ADA. So you can see we did a quick chart just to run through some of these.
So some of those are obvious, like the first four, but the ones that we should focus on are the fact that, of course, native tokens can be minted while ADA cannot. And the fact that you can pay for fees only in ADA, obviously because of security reasons from the ledger side, and that ADA is the only currency that can be part of the minimum cover for the UTXO value, also for security reasons.
So thanks, Vuk. That actually was a pretty good high-level comparison between what native tokens and differences are from ADA. However, it's still a major value proposition that we do treat all native tokens similar to ADA on the chain. We are actually coming out with the pre-production environment like promised on the last show. And to reiterate to the community what a pre-production environment is, it's not necessarily as early stage as a testnet. This is code that we have tested. We have tested within our own internal teams, and we're putting it in a pre-production environment so that developers and partners and those user personas that you saw on a previous slide can come in and work with the features as opposed to worrying about testing certain levels of the code. So this is more of a UAT and more of a way for us to learn what sort of tokens and what sort of properties that people would like going forward in the main product. So Vuk, just based on that, what can users do? Let's walk through some of the user stories.
Yeah, sure. So in the pre-production environment, as mentioned earlier, you'll be able to use the CLI in order to mint and burn tokens. Of course, in order to do that, first you'll need to define a monetary script, and you'll be able to send the tokens to addresses. Now, the thing is that this is it's not very user-friendly because it's a CLI. So what we did is we actually decided to put it in the ERC20 converter and make a more general tool that allows you to manage tokens. So you'll be able to go to one part of the ERC20 converter and create a token, set the name for the token, how many tokens you want to mint, how many decibels you want to have, and select the monetary policy and just send the token to a particular address.
That's great. Now, when we move this over to the mainnet, we're obviously going to be able to do the things from the pre-production environments, the features in the pre-production environments, but we will be adding a few other user stories to that mix.
Yeah, of course, on the mainnet, we want to have like a normal state where people are able to do whatever they are able to do with data today. Mm-hmm. So in this release, they will be able to use Daedalus. They will be able to have like a normal experience that they can expect for ADA right now.
That's correct. And then the one piece that we're also working through is the metadata registry. So that in its to itself is like a mini project within this project, but it's needed from a name registry type purpose. Look, do you have anything that you can share there?
Yeah, sure. So the metadata registry will allow people to add some metadata for specific things that are on the chain. In the case of the token, for example, that could be the name of the token, the symbol, and so on. But it's not just limited to that. We'll be sharing more with time.
Perfect. Okay. So audience, you've kind of seen the NT pre-prod. So that's the native tokens piece of the strategy. The second piece is around interoperability. So being able to bring in coins from other chains, and in this case, the ERC20 converter that we introduced in the last project. So I'm not going to go through this right now because this particular feature comparison we showed you the last time. So we won't detail everything out. You already have that recording and this visual. But what I'd like to do really is talk about with Vuk the life cycle of where we believe this ERC20 converter is going to go, and some of the excitement around the partnerships and applications that we're finding off of this.
So from the product lifecycle perspective, we are looking at the feedback that we're getting from customers, and we are realizing that many of the customers just want to make a new token on Cardano. It's not just about converting existing tokens. So we are seeing more and more people with those requirements. So this is the reason why, in general, we thought more about the converter and thought, okay, we are not just building a ERC20 converter, which is just bringing tokens from the Ethereum network. We are basically building a platform that allows people to get started with tokens. And we are thinking more in terms of what are all the needs that customers have when actually creating tokens on the platform. So this is just a small prototype of the token builder. It showcases how the token creation process is going to look like, and it's going to be part of the ERC20 converter. So it's enough for me to go to create token. I define the name of the token, for example, IOG token, then the symbol of the token, IOG, the amount of tokens that I want to mint, for example, 1,000, and the decimals that I want to have. In this particular case, I have a monetary policy that is predefined, but I can basically set up any monetary policy that I want. Now I cannot create a token because the network is not live, but basically by just clicking on create token, you'll be able to create a token as easy as that. We believe that the token creation is going to be as important as the conversion of tokens, but it's also important to keep the same user experience that we have for the token conversion.
All right, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that on the token builder. There's some exciting user experiences updates for native tokens on that, and even with the ERC20 converter, like we said with Vuk on the job, we're really looking at the user experience on tokens. But then interoperability doesn't just have to be tokens. We're also looking at it from a smart contract standpoint. And many of you would have heard Charles alluding to some of this during his AMAs and his talks. But we are adding to the Goguen program in parallel to everything we're doing natively with Plutus and Marlowe and the other DSLs, the partner angles with RV, and you're going to hear from them in the show, and also with Moon, Mutual Knowledge Systems, who you were introduced to on the last show, who's the founders of the Glow language. So what does that mean? Well, that actually means that we're looking to figure out how we can bridge their languages and what they're doing to Cardano. And we're doing that in terms of a DevNet. It's like a developer environment. These are early DevNets. We're testing out these concepts. We're recruiting Solidity developers from the field, from the community that want to be a part of it. We've been doing this so that we can get smart contracting languages integrated with Cardano so that people have options. At the end of the day, we want Cardano to fit developers and not the other way around. So this slide right here is just more of an, both these slides actually are more of an informational slide, just to show you some of the terms that you're going to hear, the K semantics term and what KEVM is, and what we're doing with Solidity on IELE, which is a part of the K semantics solutions, and Glow, of course, that's going to be compiled using the KEVM. This slide over here is once again informational, but it's to show people what source codes get compiled to what, so that there's no confusion when we're talking about the different terms around virtual machines and bytecodes. And this is all great news that we're adding an angle of interoperability into the Goguen program and thinking about developers and not just about how our native languages are going to progress. So I think it's a win-win for us. All right, so on to the next. So what are we doing from a target user standpoint? So similar to native tokens, we are looking for two main broad categories: developers and then partners. At this early stage DevNet segment, that's pretty much what we're going to be doing. So there will be some type forms we're going to share to get people that are interested to come in and play with us in these developer environments. We're going to continue the progress and the learning around these DevNets and iterate on it, and we'll open it up even more so for anybody who might not have time right now to be involved. So these are going to be open. It's a part of the program, so you guys will hear about this in our show going forward. Okay, and in summary, where are we with Goguen? So there's a lot, as you can tell just from this segment and what we're going to show you as well. There's been a lot of progress. I'm very proud of the team. The metadata feature being complete, we're making sure that Explorer has support on it, so the commercial angle, our commercial teams can now work on real applications just using the metadata standard itself. Native tokens, we've got the pre-prod coming out and working with the pre-production environments to get us to that mainnet version of native tokens. ERC20 converters, like we said, we're working with partners here. We're looking to productize the ERC20 converter from just a concept and also to an actual product that we can bundle up. Token locking, the hard fork combinator event is coming up with token locking, which will help us in the Goguen program. So that's also checkboxed by the end of the year. And the interoperability program that I just spoke about, which is very exciting news, to bring in RV and to bring in Moon and to have their languages and their concepts work on Cardano. So really exciting news there, and we're excited to launch the DevNet program in that area. Alpha on Marlowe, the playground, everything's going great. Checking up with the team with Shruti, Simon, and Mike, and we're getting a lot of feedback from you guys. The Telegram channels have been very useful, and we're continuing to work on all the integrations of the different financial contracts there and working towards a mainnet program. Plutus Playground is getting up to speed as well. We'll have some more information on that soon. Vuk is actually in charge of that as well, and working towards the DevNet finally with Plutus. So we'll have the native portion of Cardano on smart contracts ready next year, and then partnerships. And we will have a show later on this month, which is going to focus on the different types of partnerships, because that's incredibly important for utility, because that's what Goguen about. It's like I said, the utility pillar. So with that, I'm going to wrap this up. Vuk, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Okay, so lots of exciting stuff there happening. But look, maybe one of the questions that people are asking is why are we calling these DevNets specifically? What's the difference between a DevNet and a testnet?
That's an interesting question. So DevNet, kind of short for a developer environment in a way. So similar in the clip, I kind of talked about pre-production environments, Tim. And it's a similar question. Is that any different from a testnet? Yes, it is, because when it comes to a testnet, we're putting out code that's still somewhat a little bit buggy. We're asking for a little more UAT on the lower level bugs as well as the higher level bugs, as well as UAT in general, workflows and features. But with a pre-production environment akin to a DevNet, we've already done a lot of that testing. So we're actually there specifically for the experience, the feature set, and figuring out what people can build and do with them so that we're solidifying our major product, our mainnet product. So that's what a developer experience or environment is.
So I think quite a useful analogy there, I think that I've heard, is around the developer kit, for example, that game developers get sent prior to the console being available in the living room. You get your version of an Xbox, you get your version of a PlayStation. It's not a final production version, but it's basically enough to get cracking. And I guess that's kind of the approach we're taking here.
Oh, that's a great analogy, and absolutely, that is the approach. Okay,
so look, these DevNets are being developed in association with a couple of different partners, one of whom you'll all have met before, another who you probably won't. So first off, let's maybe go to a clip that I shot with the team at Runtime Verification earlier this week to hear a little bit more about IELE and also the work that they're doing on KEVM. So we're very excited to be joined on the show by Grigore and Everett from Runtime Verification. So before we dig a little bit into the project itself, maybe let's hear a little bit more about the history of Runtime Verification. Grigore, perhaps you just want to start things off.
Hi, thank you for inviting us, Tim and Aparna. So I started this company, Runtime Verification, about 10 years ago. And the goal was to bring to the real world research that we've done in my lab at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And in particular, to transform the K framework that was used mainly for academic projects into a framework that can power real products for real customers. And the term itself, runtime verification, is a term that I coined, I think about 15 years ago when I was at NASA. When we came up with this approach, somewhere between testing and formal verification, and we didn't know exactly how to call it, our papers were rejected both by the testing community and by the formal verification community because it was not clearly formal verification or testing. But we found a very fruitful middle ground that we called runtime verification, where it appeared that we can take the benefits of both formal verification and testing in a very practical way. And we called this runtime verification. It was very inspiring. It inspired a large community of researchers. Now, there's an international conference called Runtime Verification. We formed a company, Runtime Verification, and here we are.
I'm Everett, and I joined the company in early 2018. I was originally a student at UIUC, actually in a different lab than the one that Grigore runs. And life events took me out of the university, and so I had to get a job, and I got a job at Runtime Verification because I believed in what they were doing in terms of formal semantics of programming languages being the basis of all the tools that you develop for those programming languages. And when I started at the company, the main focus of the company was automotive and aerospace industries, and as Grigore said, in this testing kind of flavor to things. But at the university, we had done a class project just kind of experimenting in blockchain with Ethereum and the EVM. And that once it kind of took off at the company, we started seeing a lot of demand to do formal verification, full-blown formal verification, not this kind of mix between testing and formal verification of smart contracts. And, you know, we found it was actually commercially viable to do so because of the because smart contracts are usually pretty small and simple, basically. And so that kind of took off our smart contract side of the business. And initially, we weren't really sure where we fit in the ecosystem, but we kept doing formal verification for people. And more recently, we've been developing products that we're hoping people benefit from in terms of improving their own code quality themselves without having to consult with us. And then and more recently, we're seeing a lot more smart contract audit requests for various DeFi applications. So it's been feels like it's been a long 2 years or 3 years at this point, but I don't know. I guess it went pretty quick. So
that's an awesome story. I mean, starting off in the automotive space and the aerospace space, that's part of my background as well. So I'm quite familiar with the amount of testing and rigor that happens in that industry, and then bringing that into blockchain. I think that's a niche market, and it's much needed, especially for where we're headed. And Cardano, the project itself, is so heavily reliant on high quality code and how we're testing and how we're verifying that it makes perfect sense that we're working together. But Everett, you mentioned something about the smart contract space a little bit, and about the DeFi inquiries that you guys are getting from audits. So just in that vein, from a market perspective, are there any particular trends or insights that you'd like to share with our audience regarding the smart contract markets? Where do you see it going? And then, if you don't mind, Grigore, after that, I'd love to hear your opinion on it as well.
Yeah, actually, so when we first started, a lot of the work we were doing was really infrastructural. So it was just really basic, like a multi-sig wallet, these types of things, really low-level infrastructural work, verifying things. And then there was kind of, there's various crypto crazes that have happened, and in those points, usually you see kind of a lot of toy smart contracts, like just kind of for fun sort of things that get way too big, way bigger than they were meant to be initially. But more recently, in the last few months, we've seen a lot more of these DeFi style smart contracts where people are porting traditional financial instruments over to blockchain, basically. So you have the same kind of traditional financial instruments, but now they're running on blockchain in an automated fashion, and they're starting to add some twists to it that maybe didn't show up in the traditional financial sector as well. So I think we're starting to really get into a more serious kind of application of blockchain than we've seen in the past couple years, where people are actually saying, hey, this is real. We can actually do decentralized finance without banks there to moderate it. And that's kind of what we're seeing more in the past few months, is more audit requests for these style of applications, which aren't just one-off like CryptoKitties, trading platforms, whatever. They're actually full-blown financial instruments that we're seeing here. So
I would like to add that, in my view, in order for DeFi to have the impact and the huge transformative nature that it can have to become reality for all of us, we need major liquidity providers to step in and provide large amounts of money so that large loans can be made and the whole infrastructure to really replace the current banking system as we know it. But in order for that to happen, the big liquidity providers must have trust in this code, in these DeFi protocols. And there are so many things that can go wrong there. It's only when you do formal verification of code that you realize how many things can go wrong. Many enthusiasts are enthusiasts. They think, oh, this should go. Oh, that's nice. They think 5 seconds, 10 seconds. This is really cool. Let's do it. Right? But the reality is that there are so many hidden errors, so many possible exploits there, that without formal verification, which is the best we know as a community, the best we've done in 50 years or so of research, to avoid, even eliminate sometimes coding errors, without that, you will not attract the big liquidity providers to step in, because there's a huge risk to lose big. So that's why we are firm believers in the power of formal verification in DeFi. And we believe that in 5 years or so, there will be no DeFi protocol that is taken seriously without being formally verified rigorously by very reputable teams. You see, many DeFi protocols now, these days, are anonymous. Why they are anonymous? Like SushiSwap. pancake swap, a pickle, right? Because nobody wants to take responsibility for those. They know there could be bugs, they could be in trouble. I don't think that has a long-term future. I think they need to be done by reputable companies like Runtime Verification or maybe Cardano or many other companies like that, and to have powerful reasoning methods behind to analyze both the economic models and validate important properties over the economic models, and also all the code, make sure that there are no errors that can be exploited.
So we're going to dig down a little bit into the IELE and the KVM project that we're going to be working on with you specifically. But before we do that, perhaps let's just go back to the K framework and just hear a little bit more about that kind of meta that sits across the top of both of these and how that fits in.
The K framework is what we call a programming language semantic framework, which means that you formalize mathematically, rigorously, your programming language once and for all. And then from that one mathematical artifact, you derive automatically or semi-automatically all the tools that you need for that language, like parsers, interpreters, compilers, program verifiers, model checkers. All the tools that we need for that language can be derived in a correct by construction style from the mathematical definition of the programming language, in a way that there is nothing to prove about them, nothing to prove that they are correct, because they are generated correct by construction. So that was a firm belief that I think my advisor inoculated in my head, probably when late 90s, when he convinced me that that's the only way to go if we want to do things the right way. And I fell for it. And I had absolutely no motivation afterwards to do things any other way. And by that, I mean ad hoc tools. Okay, so pick an ad hoc language, let's say Java 4, right? And then pick a tool, let's say a model checker. And now let's do a model checker for Java 4. Right? You spend years to work on that, and then nothing of that is reusable to the next version of Java, or C, or Solidity, or JavaScript. And that made no sense, because it was like, at best, like a huge waste of talent and not economical. So we decided to step back and do things properly, which was, by the way, my advisor was Goguen, which is also how you call the next release in Cardano. I'm very honored for that. So Goguen convinced me that if we do things mathematically rigorously, long-term we win. And then we designed the K framework in that spirit, where you define a programming language once and for all, and then all the tools are derived from that one definition. And once you think about it, and once you assimilate this concept, then it's hard to motivate yourself to do things any other way. And that's what we've done. And we've done K for many years. I think we started in 2000, late 2000, 2005. We had the first prototype. And we had it in the academic environment at university. And then in 2015, it was ready to be transitioned into the company, to runtime verification. In 2015, we started using K in runtime verification. And we had the first tool based on it, then another. And then we started working with IOHK, and things grew from there.
So in terms of the tools, we're talking about specifically IELE, IELE, and then also the KEVM products. So why don't you guys give me a little bit of an overview of those two and how this takes the K framework, and where do you see this evolving to? Sure.
So I'll give you a little bit of history initially. KVM started out as a class project at the University of Illinois, and then actually IOHK stepped in, and they kind of saw the future in smart contract quality assurance. You know, at the time, we weren't thinking of doing anything with it. It was just a class project where we were saying, okay, this was cool. It was a nice experiment, and we were able to do some simple verification and some testing using the KVM. But IOHK saw it, and they realized kind of what it meant in terms of providing smart contract quality assurance. And they approached us actually and said, hey, how would you like to turn this into something as more of a commercial venture? And that's what really resulted in it being transferred over to the runtime verification side of things instead of the University of Illinois side of things. So runtime verification took off, and there was a lot of infrastructural development that had to happen initially first, which was funded largely by IOHK. And then once this infrastructural work was kind of done, we started being able to be self-sustaining, basically, in terms of doing smart contract security audits and other protocol modeling and stuff like this. So it turns out there was a huge market for this high quality assurance work that we could do for people. So KEVM, at this point, it's basically done. When there's an update when there's a hard fork for Ethereum, we have to do a little maintenance work on it. And occasionally we, find little issues or we find inefficiencies in it, and we fix those. So the future for KEVM is just building out tooling around it at this point. And the tooling that we've done so far, we started off just doing formal verification, so we just had formal verification tooling around it. And there's been a few other companies that have also built their own tooling around it. So what comes to mind is like DAppHub has developed the Collab and the ACT specification language to make it easier to do formal verification using KEVM. That's kind of one of the bigger success stories. But more recently, we've been developing this tool called Firefly, which is us trying to wrap up everything that's automatable about our quality assurance pipeline into one tool that developers can plug into their existing quality assurance stack. So rather than, the power of K and KEVM comes from, you have to get to it, to access it, you have to be a formal methods expert. You have to really know what you're doing. But there are some smaller things that can be done in an automated fashion by the computers. So we're trying to wrap all those smaller things up into a tool that people can just use themselves to increase their smart contract quality assurance. That's for KEVM. For IELE, it also started a while ago. It was back when we were doing the initial IOHK engagements in 2018, and there's this new blockchain coming out, Cardano, right? And we wanted a better designed VM for it, because we struggled a lot with trying to verify some of the initial Ethereum smart contracts using KEVM, because there's a lot of kind of, I guess, quirky design decisions in the EVM itself. And we thought we could do better. And so we helped Cardano to design this new VM called IELE, which is much more influenced by kind of more modern register-based VMs than EVM is. So if you read IELE code and you've read LLVM code before, you'll see, oh, okay, there's kind of some similarities between the two. And we benefited a lot from University of Illinois' expertise in LLVM and writing compiler passes and all their expertise there. So yeah, IELE started out as a designed language, actually, and we designed it to be easier to do reasoning with than EVM, knowing all the problems that we had doing EVM formal verification. And IELE now needs to be updated, and so we're working on updating it to get to the point where kind of in this steady state that we're in with KEVM. And then once we're there, it'll be the same kind of story to develop tooling around it. So one of the kind of 4 to 6 month plans we have is applying Firefly to IELE, for instance, and having this bag of automated tools that smart contract developers targeting IELE can use for doing their smart contract quality assurance. So that's kind of the story of those two.
So you mentioned that we first started working together back in 2018, and obviously since then the platform's come a long way, and I think particularly the community's come a long way as well. So what particularly excites you and interests you about working with Cardano now over the next few months ahead, particularly?
So I can tell you what I really like about Cardano in general. I really like the team. It's an amazingly strong team. When you look at the team on the IOHK webpage, it almost feels like a top-notch research lab with top researchers, top papers, lots of papers published. So everything is derived from fundamental research and from fundamental understanding of very difficult problems. So the team is a major factor for us. Then the vision and the long-term planning is also done in a way that makes it scale. right? If you look at many blockchains, they have these unbelievable staking rewards, like 100%, 50%. It's clear they want just to do things quickly to attract masses of enthusiasts. But if you look at how Cardano made every single step along the line very rigorously, it's clearly that it aims for the long term, and this is what happens for how we do things in fundamental research. So it's all fueled by research, and I really like that. And particularly, I like the fact that the CEO of the company, Charles Hoskinson, is a big believer in the power of research and fundamental understanding of things, as opposed to ad hoc doing things quickly. So that's what attracts me. I don't know, Everett, you may have a different take on it. But when I think of Cardano, that's what comes to mind, and that's why I like to work with Cardano. And I'm very optimistic about any future that we can take together.
Yeah, my impression of Cardano has been similar, actually. I'm impressed with how much emphasis is put on research, which I think is important for this space because this is new. You know, a lot of this is totally new. The world hasn't seen a lot of the, you know, this concept of DeFi where you don't have centralized people managing the money. That's totally new. So I think there has to be some research in terms of, okay, how are we going to do this in a way that it works? And I think Cardano is putting that time in, you know, and they understand the importance of doing that, you know, so they're actually approaching different research groups like our group, and you know we've been in touch with some of the other groups they talk to, and telling them, hey, you know, we'd like to get a tool out of you, and we'd also like to get some research out of you and get some more understanding of what it is we're trying to do here. So I think that's an important aspect of how Cardano is approaching these problems, rather than the kind of shotgun, we're going to try everything and see what sticks against the wall, and then, you know, maybe lose some money on a few of the contracts because it didn't work or something like that. They're taking a much more principled approach.
Okay, so very exciting times ahead. Thank you very much, Everett and Grigore, and yeah, we're really looking forward to working with you again and more closely over the months ahead. Thank you both.
So Tim, what I really like about the approach runtime verification does is they're looking at this as a universality type of concept, to where, you know, developers that develop in multiple different languages and how to verify that code in a way that's somewhat almost standard. And their case semantics, their solutions that come up against case semantics really is very exciting to me, because it simplifies a lot of the more complex languages in our space. So I was very excited to talk to them and partner with them and see where we're going there. Another such approach that we're doing, so outside of universality, is interoperability. And we talk a lot about that for Cardano and a platform in general. And GLOW, which is the language for mutual knowledge systems, caught up with their co-founder, Fare, great guy. And we have a clip to run just to kind of show you guys the language itself. And a great way to look at it is they automate some of the more interesting security-related areas that need to happen when compiling a code is almost automated, and that makes it a lot easier to do. So that's their value proposition. So I just want to go and show you guys a quick demo of that. Hi, audience. We're here with Fare, the co-founder of Mutual Knowledge Systems and of the language GLOW. Hey, Fare, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me, Aparna.
So last time we introduced Fare to our community, and there was quite a little bit, actually more. There was a lot of buzz around the GLOW language. So I did want to bring you back onto the show to kind of do like a part 2, if you may, because we talked about the value proposition of GLOW and the language. But one of the things that really stuck out to me was the trust concept, you know, and how the language solves that trust concept and the attack scenarios, and what do you do to mitigate some of those things. So on this segment, we're actually going to talk a little bit about those scenarios and also do a little demo of the language so the audience sees in real time what this looks like. So Fare, I'm going to turn this over to you and help us understand a little bit more about the scenarios with the trust.
Okay, let me share my screen and share a part of a presentation I gave earlier this year at CC. I had given a presentation at CC, but the part of this presentation that I want to show you is the attack models. So what are, every time people talk about security, something that a lot of them miss is what am I actually protecting you against or not protecting you, failing to protect against. So the attack model that Glow aims at solving, we don't solve everything today, but that we have a design that is on the right track to solve them, is first and foremost abstraction failures. Glow, the whole approach of Glow is that we have a language that simplifies things by making them more abstract, taking it to a level of abstraction that's closer to what the user cares about, so that all the mistakes that you do as part of the implementation, the user cannot do them. Only the implementer can make a bad thing, such as if you have a bug in Solidity or you have a bug in Ethereum or Bitcoin or anything, you can lose all your money because there's a bug in Bitcoin. But at least if you trust Bitcoin and you trust Solidity, you cannot, in Solidity, you can still write a bad, you can still write reentrancy issue problem in Solidity. You can still do bad delegation. You can still destroy a library under your the hood. You can miss some kind of permission checks, and there have been like tens or hundreds of millions of dollars lost this way just because of bad abstraction. And this is something that totally disappears with Glow, because Glow is at a level of abstraction above all these issues. So yes, there can be a bug in the Glow compiler, so there is a bug in Solidity or anything, but there cannot be a bug in your programs written in Glow that cause any of these issues. That's just impossible, not expressible. So there's also problem of misplaced trust. Even more money has been lost because of misplaced trust. People used an exchange that was hacked, or they trust a bad oracle or anything like that. Basically, your application isn't as centralized as it's purposed to be. And I cannot solve that with Glow, but what I can do is I can make the hypothesis explicit. I can make it, if you run this app, you're trusting this validation network, or you're trusting this particular issuer. So do you trust them? If you do, I cannot make you trust them or not trust them, but it must be explicit as part of your application who you are trusting or not. And when this becomes explicit, maybe people will pay more attention to non-custodial DEXs, exchanges, and decentralized oracles, things like that. Because, they understand, actually, maybe I should not use this app. It's actually a centralized app that happens to run on a decentralized network, which is totally centralized. Like it's So also lots of low-level attacks. And that's the part where everyone today has to solve these issues on their own. You have to make sure your computer is secure, you won't get hacked, that your network is not going to be DDoSed, so you can still post your transaction, that you must play the game so that there's no economic denial of service where someone buys the entire blockchain, so you cannot post your transaction. There are lots of system programming bugs that can cause all your data to use the system calls the wrong way and you lose your data. Or your computer, your data center goes down and you lose your data because you don't have a backup, etc. So all these are engineering problems that are well known, but right now everyone has to solve them from scratch. The value proposition of Glow here is that we can hire a specialized engineering team and everyone will share it. Glow is an open source project, so that means that everyone who uses the open source project gets all the value in the beginning without having to have their own team. And of course, we're also a company, so we will sell the services so that you can integrate well in your system, because even open source project, you have to deploy it, and that requires still some engineering specialty. But at least all these attacks are attacks that we can prevent with Glow. We can make it that if you write an app, you can focus on the business logic, on the economic aspect. I'm writing a derivatives contract, I'm writing a supply chain tracking or a shopping app, whatever. You want to focus on your business logic, and everything, all the lower level systems aspect is something that can be shared by all the users of Glow, because only the Glow team need to do that. And if you need to modify Glow, we can do it for you, or you can do it yourself. It's open source. But at least your modification will serve everyone. And the person who writes the app as such can just focus on their business logic. And that's the main thing about Glow, I hope, to solve. And I want to illustrate that with what the simplest programming Glow can be. It's buying a signature. Some buyer, Alice, wants to buy a signature from Bob, which is basically an access to some door, or rental of some property or anything. It can be signature for a swap on another blockchain. And the contract looks like this. There are 6 lines of actual code. These 3 lines, I'm saying that I have an interaction between the seller and the buyer. And this interaction takes a digest and a price as parameters. The price right now is an integer. And the buyer is going to deposit the price into in the contract. And then the seller will publicly sign the signature and then withdraw the money. So, and then closing brace for the 6th line. And publicly means basically that I'm going to do the thing verifiably, and then I am going to publish it, and then everyone is going to verify that the contract is going to verify that it's correct. And this is the same thing as requires that the signature is valid from the seller. So you have 6 lines of code in Glow, and these 6 lines of code spare you all kinds of attacks that you would have to deal with if you were writing them by hand in Solidity and JavaScript, or even to a point in Bluetooth and the contract is Haskell, Bluetooth and Haskell. Bluetooth and Haskell is much better than Solidity and JavaScript, but it's still lower levels than writing your thing in Glow. So Glow would be at the same level of abstraction, or slightly different, but same general level of abstraction as, for instance, Marlowe. So it's you're very removed from all the details of the network. You cannot write a network failure in Glow. There's no space for a network failure. But we generate all the code that will talk to the network, so you don't have to. So what happens if I compile that? Let's look at the compilation output. Here is from those 6 lines of code, we generate like 53 lines of pseudocode, and this pseudocode will run. There is a part that runs here, this signature. There's a part that runs on the consensus that everyone will run here. There's a part that runs only on the buyer's computer here. So this is the part that runs on the buyer's computer, and this is the part that runs only on the seller's computer. And these parts are slightly different, but we generate at the same time the contract, the client code for the buyer, the client code for the seller. It's all generated from those 6 lines of code. And so these parts will remain in sync. There's no case where, I modify the contract a slightly bit and I forget to modify one of these. And then you lose all your money or something bad happens. No, this code, the code for the buyer, the code for the seller, and the code for the contract are always in sync by construction, and they always handle timeouts by construction. So all the usual failures disappear. And if we want to run it, let's run this code. So I have an integration test that runs it. And we are hitting a private blockchain. And for this private blockchain, so the first step is the buyer creates a contract at the first transaction. And the second step is the seller sees a handshake sent to him off chain by the buyer and decides, okay, this looks legit, so I'm going to generate and publish the signature. And this ends up being a transaction here sent to the blockchain. And at the end, this transaction gets published. There's a receipt. This is a transaction receipt. This transaction receipt, you have a log, a data log. And if you look at this data log, the first byte, except for the one, is a signature I'm looking for. And indeed, as a last step, the buyer will extract the signature from the blockchain and say, yeah, the money was sent, and the money could not have been sent without the signature being published. And yes, indeed, the signature is on the blockchain. So that's how it works. All this is taken care for you at the mystic cost of these six lines of code that you don't even have to write. Most people should not write Glow code. They should use the code generated by Glow. We will generate code for JavaScript and Bluetooth and whatever is for your blockchain. And you will not, some people will write Glow code, and those people who deal with key economic issues will need to write it, and they will be spared all the network and low-level problems. But most users will use these interactions, such as buying signature or playing whatever future contract you have, and that's how it goes. And some of this, of course, this interaction will be parameterized by whatever parameters make sense for your application at a higher level.
Got it. So this is well thought out, Farid, and I'm glad the demo. I've seen the demo prior as well, and this actually gives the audience an understanding of what it means, the abstraction layer means, and how you almost automate the attack, the trust versions of
Yes.
running contracts. So great. So this is how we're thinking of interoperating. So why is this important? This is important because from a partner perspective, we see that Glow has something, they bring something to the Cardano community from what you've just seen. So figuring out how to get them to interoperate with our Goguen program and what's going to go on Cardano provides options for interoperability. And that's exactly where we're taking this. So I appreciate it, Francois. Appreciate that you came out here and have shown us the language, and I'm sure you'll be on more shows as we move further in the relationship around interoperability.
I just wanted to say that right now we are targeting the EVM virtual machine, and we can run on any EVM network. But we also have a prototype working in Plutus, and whenever Plutus comes out, we will run on Plutus too, and on any blockchain that will want us to run on it, or that anyone wants us to support, we will run. So portability, I think, is also a big plus because we can abstract also the blockchain away from the dApp developer. The dApp developer will write their application once in Glow, or the critical part once in Glow, and it will run on all the blockchain, and so they can choose the best. And my choice for the best is Cardano, but whoever the market chooses, you will be able to choose.
Perfect. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Okay, so look, I mean, two really exciting partnerships, lots more momentum in terms of the smart contracts and the developer outreach kind of areas. But I guess a lot of people are wondering, where does this fit in terms of timings and how things are rolling out?
Right. So native tokens is one approach. That and the ERC20 converter, that's rolling. Plutus Playground, that's another aspect. And I'm just kind of touching base with you guys on everything that's happening with the Goguen program. That's also, we'll see some exciting announcements on that this month. Marlowe Playground going really well also with the feedback that we have received, and we're moving towards a Marlowe for end users product really nicely. I've talked to the team on that. We're moving very smoothly on it. So we're looking at Q1 of next year for that as well.
Okay, so some more important activity around the Goguen rollout from both a tactical point of view and from a strategic point of view. And in fact, I understand that Charles will be sharing a little bit more information on all this activity very, very soon. So keep an eye out on his YouTube channel for more from Charles. Okay, so that's one type of collaboration that we've talked about. Maybe it's now time to turn to another type. So over at the Cardano Foundation, I talked to Jeremy recently about an interesting new collab that they're working on. So Goguen is all about bringing new utility to the Cardano blockchain, and that includes everything from partnerships, collaborations to new enterprise use cases. And joining me now is Jeremy Förster from the Cardano Foundation to share a little bit of news about a collaboration that we've recently announced. So Jeremy, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And just before we start, perhaps you can just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you came to the Cardano Foundation.
Thanks, Tim, and hello, everyone. My name is Jeremy Förster, and I have been living in Taiwan for the past 10 years, originally from the US. My professional background is primarily in corporate banking, where I covered large corporates and emerging markets. And since mid-2016, I transitioned more into blockchain space, as Taipei is a tech capital of the world. So I've had a great opportunity to meet many like-minded individuals and had chances to also serve as a government advisor on crypto policy issues and also adoption efforts for blockchain. Funny enough, back in early 2018, I actually promoted Cardano as a solution for political donations. So it's great that I could actually join the foundation earlier this year and be a part of the growth.
So perhaps you can tell us just a little bit about what are some of the parameters that you're looking at? What are some of the objectives you're looking at when striking fresh collaborations?
Yeah, our partnership strategy at the Cardano Foundation is really to showcase the economic utility to specific Cardano features. And we do this through having use cases which we believe have mass market appeal. And doing so, this demonstrates the values that an advanced public blockchain infrastructure enables. So transactional metadata is the first available feature where we've integrated this into a fully functional enterprise-grade product. We put specific attention on the use case because we want to show the greater value that is provided to end users. And a key mission of the foundation is to scale adoption of Cardano. So showing these valuable use cases through integrations with third parties is one way that we provide leadership to the greater Cardano community.
Okay, well, thank you. And look, very kindly, you've actually shot a short interview clip with Scantrust, who you're collaborating with. You and Mel from the CF spoke to them earlier, so let's roll that clip now.
I'm here today with Mel McCann, who leads technical integrations at Cardano Foundation, and we're joined by Ricardo Garcia, who is the head of partners and blockchain at Scantrust. How are you doing today, Ricardo?
I'm doing great. Based here in Berlin, the so-called blockchain capital of the world in some circles. It's a great day, but I'm doing great. So really excited to be here. Thanks for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to our exchange here today.
Thank you. Now, can you give everyone who's watching today a quick introduction into what Scantrust does and the values they provide to their clients?
Sure. So Scantrust was founded now 6 years ago in Switzerland, in Lausanne, where our headquarters is based, and have since then expanded all around the world. So we have a presence in Asia, in Europe, and have been doing projects all around the world. So by now we're active in around 130 countries. So there are active Scantrust QR codes in pretty much every continent around the world. And we have been focused on mainly 2 customer groups. So we have around 30 customers today. They're a combination of Fortune 2000 companies and small, medium enterprises in 2 verticals. The first one is fast-moving consumer goods, in particular beauty care, food and beverage, and luxury. And the second one is what we call industrial goods, which encompasses everything from automotive, chemicals, agrochemicals, precious metals, electronics, and more. And the value that we provide to customers, I usually describe it based on 3 pillars. So we, first of all, enable companies to protect their products against counterfeits. So we provide a special technology that I'll explain afterwards, which allows to verify if a product is genuine or fake. Second, we enable companies to track their products in the supply chain from the moment they're produced until they reach the end consumer. So we increase transparency in the supply chain. And last but not least, very importantly, since we are a QR code-based solution, we also enable consumer engagement. So we enable you to build a communication channel directly with your end consumer via the product. And the way we do this is with 2 things. First of all, we have developed a platform that allows you to generate a unique digital identity based on an individual QR code. And this QR code is printed on product packaging, and it's different for every single product. So not per SKU or per batch, but really for every single unit. So this gives the product a digital identity that is managed in our system across its entire life cycle. And the second element of the value and the system that we have is our patented method to make QR codes not only unique, but also copy-proof. And this is a method that we invented, which is a special graphic. We call it a secure graphic that is placed into the center of a QR code and then enables a consumer with his smartphone, with a mobile app, to verify that the product is indeed authentic.
That's great. Now, how is blockchain a part of your solution?
Sure. So we ourselves are not a blockchain-based solution, but blockchain is a technology that can be combined together with our system. So we look at ourselves as a provider of unique tamper-proof identifiers. So since our QR codes cannot be copied, they are a good tool to use as an onboarding mechanism to go from the physical world to the digital world. So usually We work in supply chains in use cases which are related to tracking assets. And what is important in that context is we have a blockchain which has an immutable audit trail about an asset's history, but at some point we will have to connect this digital audit trail to a physical product and uniquely identify the product. And this unique identification of the product is what we are able to provide, and which is also why, meanwhile, almost 4 years ago, we started getting more and more requests from blockchain companies and have actively positioned ourselves in that space.
And what then do you see special and different about the product that we've done together while you're using Cardano?
Yeah, so first of all, what's special about Cardano itself is that there were two factors that interested us. The first one is there's a very large and active ecosystem and community around it. And we really liked that because it shows us that there is a broad community supporting the protocol and that the protocol has a real chance of getting large-scale adoption. So that was one important factor. And the second one is that there was a metadata feature that was released recently that essentially allows to include metadata into transactions directly. And this is what we will be using for our integration to add asset-specific information into transactions on Cardano. And what is useful about that feature is since the information is linked to the transaction directly, it's a lot cheaper and easier compared to if we would, for instance, be using a blockchain that forces us to use smart contracts. So we use that, and what is unique about our integration is that we have put a lot of focus on independent verification of the data. So since the data will be sitting on a public blockchain, a user will theoretically have all the information available to himself verify that the information that is on the blockchain was indeed, if we take wine as an example, it was indeed uploaded by a wine company at a specific point in time and was verified by another authority at a specific point in time. And he can verify that this the claim that is in the blockchain is indeed correct.
Indeed. I believe that this open data practice kind of brings out more use cases for not only Cardano, but blockchain in general. So Mel, do you mind just going into more details on how we kind of confirm now that this is a tamper-proof on an end-to-end basis?
Sure. So from the Scantrust side, they have this tamper-proof QR code. And when we were building and designing this integration with Scantrust and Cardano, we wanted to ensure that the data is also tamper-proof. So we use SHA-256 hashes and digital signatures. The hashes, allow anybody publicly to go and verify that the data has not been modified in any way. And because the blockchain is immutable, that's always going to be the case. And then we also use the public signatures to provide attribution so they know who has signed the data. So Scantrust and their client can both digitally sign and prove that they verify that data is accurate. So I think the combination of Scantrust and Cardano, the integration between the two brings together the excellence that we offer in the blockchain industry and the excellence that they offer in their industry. And I think it's been an absolute pleasure working together, and I'm excited about the future together.
That's right.
Absolutely.
This is just the first step, was with transactional metadata. As more features of Cardano are released, that brings out more opportunities for integration with the Scantrust product offering. So Ricardo, thank you for joining us today, and enjoy the gray skies.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure, and look forward to continuing our work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. Great to hear more about that interesting project, and hopefully the first of a number, I hope.
Absolutely. Once more features of Cardano become available, there will be a lot more announcements made in this front. And one of the keys here that we look at is driving the market infrastructure surrounding Cardano, because the best way that Cardano will get in the hands of everyone is in integrations and different aspects of the market.
Jeremy, that's great. Thank you very much for joining us.
All right, so Tim, that was a pretty good conversation with Jeremy, and it's good to see that we're firing on all cylinders when it comes to utility and finding those partnerships from the CF, from our team, and also from our commercial teams as well. So now kind of pivoting to an event that's happening in December, the Hard Fork Combinator event, and this is for token locking. And we're bringing back our favorite guy, Kevin, and Tim, you caught up with him to give us the deets on that.
So, Kevin, welcome back on the show. We've got another Hard Fork Combinator event coming up, haven't we? What's happening?
Yeah, well, hey, in some sense, not very much, Tim, because just like the Byron Shelley transition, it's going to go very, very smoothly. We promise. We've been working very, very hard behind the scenes, developing and deploying the fantastic Hard Fork Combinator event to make sure that the process is as easy and smooth as possible for the stake pool operators, for the Cardano network, and for the regular ADA holders, of course. But seriously, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be rolling forward the protocol version. At the moment, we're running protocol version 2.0, which is we've codenamed Shelley. What we'll be doing in the upcoming Hard Fork event is to roll forward to the next Hard Fork version. This is version 3.0, codenamed Allegra, and that is going to introduce a new feature called token locking. That's going to be the major thing that we'll be doing. From our perspective, this is a really big deal because we've done the Hard Fork once live on Cardano and we've shown we can do it. What we're now doing is to get to a stage where not only have we shown we can do it, but we're going to show that we can do it again and again and again. So to make that happen, we've had to generalize internally some of the mechanisms that we had put in place just for Byron Shelley. And now we're in a situation where we're confident that we can just do this on a regular basis. So whenever there are new things that need to be introduced, new features, we can just say, okay, there's a hard fork coming up. We're ready for it. Press the button. Off we go.
So just to be clear, the word hard fork often fills people with dread and fear because generally hard forks are not a good thing. But the whole point is here, we've created technology that allows us to fork the network with minimal disruption to everybody. That's basically it, isn't it?
That's basically it. So what the Hard Fork Combinator does is essentially to allow a smooth transition from one protocol version to the next protocol version. And as you're saying, in most blockchains, this is a traumatic event because everything has to stop. You have to recreate the chain from the beginning using the new protocol. And only once you've done that and everyone's synchronized can you start running again. In contrast, what the Hard Fork Combinator does is to keep the network running during this transition and to extend the original chain history with the new blocks that are minted after the protocol has changed. And of course, the real complication is that during this transitional period, you could have some stake pools trying to produce blocks according to the old protocol, some producing blocks according to the new protocol, and you've magically got to create a chain that synthesizes blocks correctly from both these kinds of operator, and that's where the magic comes in.
So let's maybe just dig a little bit into token locking itself. Now, we're talking elsewhere in the show about metadata, which was really the first piece of, sort of non-transactional utility, which we've deployed on Cardano. This is the next bit, isn't it? Token locking. What does token locking do, and how will it bring kind of new use cases?
So fundamentally, what we're doing with token locking, Tim, is to put a hold on a specific token for a period of time. So what we've got is a form of time locking where a record is made that a particular token is being held for some purpose. So this doesn't prevent you from staking the token. It doesn't prevent you from disposing the token if you wish. But what it does mean is that if the token isn't held by the user for a period of time, then that fact becomes known. And you can use this then to trigger conditional contracts of various kinds. So one example might be to do with purchasing a house or other property. What you might do is enter into a contract with some other party where they agree to buy your house. You agree to sell them the house. You haven't sold them the house today. That's going to happen at some point in the future. And of course, if you then sell the house to a third party, the contract is going to be void. And there may, of course, then be some penalties associated with breaking the contract. So what token locking does is to essentially create that representation that says this thing is not going to be disposed of. It's going to be held for this period of time and is then available to fulfill the contract when it becomes due.
So it's a kind of a fundamental building block for smart contracts of all types, and I guess ultimately sort of non-fungible tokens as well and that kind of thing.
That's right. It's a key piece of core technology for all kinds of smart contracts. It's a relatively small piece of technology. It's obviously not everything we want to do with smart contracts. There's going to be more exciting things coming up in the very near future with multi-asset tokens, with full Plutus scripting. We're rolling this out now because we have a need for it to enable part of the Cardano governance mechanism.
Which, of course, is the Project Catalyst voting, which this is going to enable.
That's right. So this will enable the Project Catalyst voting. So the way that's going to work is, as I've just described, ADA holders will be able to lock their tokens during a voting period. Now, crucially, that doesn't mean they can't spend them, dispose of them. All it means is that secures their voting rights as long as they continue to hold those votes. So they're making a promise that they'll hold the votes. If they don't, so they'll hold the tokens, the ADA. If they don't hold the ADA for the voting period, then the voting is not going to be counted. Their votes are not going to be counted. And this has a number of important effects for the voting system as a whole. So it means that you can't double count a vote. You can't vote twice on the same issue, either in the same way or in different ways. It means that votes cannot be transferred. You can't buy votes. Various types of common issues are just completely eliminated by this mechanism. So if only we'd had this in place about a month ago, Tim, then all the American public would have had to do would be to buy ADA, and then they could have voted directly on their presidential choice without any of the kerfuffle that we've seen, without any of the legal process, because ADA would have guaranteed it.
Maybe we've got another chance in 4 years, Kevin. Let's look forward to that, maybe. So look, I understand at the moment that this protocol update is in internal testing. It's in internal QA testing at the moment. Perhaps just walk us briefly through the next steps and when we can expect the Hard Fork Combinator event to happen.
Yeah, so the first stage, as you're saying, Tim, it's to go. We're going through our full QA processes. This is happening at the moment. So initial testing, testing on an internal testnet, simulating the real-world environment. At the same time, we're also testing scalability of the system before we deploy it. Once we're happy that everything is working absolutely perfectly, once people other than the developers have gone through the hard fork event and confirmed that it works under a variety of real-world circumstances, then we'll be in a position to move this on to the Cardano testnet, the standard Cardano testnet. Stake pool operators can try that out there. In fact, anyone can try it out there. You can all check that what we're saying is true. We'll progress through some hard fork there, and you'll be able to try out all the new commands that we have available. Now, this is technically a relatively simple feature. There aren't going to be many changes, in fact, to the commands that are available to the operators. So we think the process is going to go pretty smoothly, and essentially it's just providing a bit of a check, a bit of verification, letting people familiarize themselves with the code. So we should be ready to go very soon after we deploy the testnet on the mainnet, Tim. We're not going to have the same extended period that we had with Shelley. The reason we had such a long period with Shelley was to give people a chance to engage early on with all the new commands, to become familiar with the process of staking, delegation, setting up and running a stake pool, etc. All that is just going to carry forward. Here we're just adding in the token locking operation itself. So really you don't need to spend so much time on that as we did before.
And all happening right now and over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah,
over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Be prepared for it.
Fantastic. Kevin, thanks very much for joining us.
Great. Bye, Tim.
Okay, so another packed show, Aparna. We talked about Goguen. We talked about those DevNets coming up. And actually, let's just remind everybody, if you've got experience working in the Solidity space or indeed any other language and you feel you want to get involved in those DevNets projects, we're sharing a link right now for a type form. So please do get in touch with us. Let us know what you're interested in and where your expertise lies, and we'll see how we can involve you in that program going forwards. We've got the Hard Fork Combinator event coming up with the token locking. We've got our pre-production environments. Lots happening all during the course of this month, and we've got another show on the 17th as well. So do tune in for that. We'll have some more news, some more updates. A couple of things just to highlight. We'll have a bit of an update on Africa. Lots of conversations, lots of questions out there around Africa. So we've sat down with John O'Connor, our head of African operations, just to give us a bit more of a strategic overview of what the last year in Africa has brought and what we can kind of expect into 2021 as well. So tune in for that next show. And secondly, we don't stop here. We've done Shelley, we're doing Goguen, we're doing a bit of Voltaire with the voting and the catalyst voting coming up. Next on the list is Basho. So we'll also have an update on Hydra and where things are going as we're starting to move out of the conceptual phase into the development phase. I think that's about it for today, isn't it, Aparna?
It sure is. Great to see everybody. Thank you. And tune in next time.
Thanks, everybody.